Apples grown without chemicals or fertilizers. Rice that's more resistant to diseases and pests. Microbes called endophytes are used on these products. Recent research has shown that endophytes can bring out the hidden strengths of plants. This researcher says crops could be grown without chemicals by harnessing endophytes. Farmers have come to rely on agricultural chemicals and fertilizers to boost yields. Last week, a UN conference adopted a protocol on farming and biodiversity. Delegates reaffirmed the importance of biodiversity for sustainable agriculture. In the meantime, researchers are studying ways to use endophytes in agriculture. Tests to put the microbes into practical use have begun. New Zealand has been promoting endophytes in its farming sector. The economic benefits could amount to $175 million per year.
The big advantages from endophyte research have been high productivity in terms of agriculture.
Today, we'll look at how endophytes are bringing about changes in the way crops are grown.
Welcome to today's Close-Up. I'm Takeshige Morimoto. Tiny organisms that can only be seen under a microscope may change the face of agriculture. Farmers have long used agrochemicals and fertilizers to maximize crop yields, but the chemicals pollute rivers and erode the soil. Can we grow crops that are resistant to disease and harmful insects without relying on agricultural chemicals and fertilizers? Such an ideal form of agriculture may become possible with the help of microorganisms. One type of microorganism attracting attention is called the endophyte. It may sound like the name of a new martial art, but endo means within and phyte means plant. In other words, endophytes are microbes that live inside plants. Many kinds of endophytes, by living inside plants, bring out the hidden strengths of their hosts, such as their growth potential and resistance to disease and harmful insects. Let's take a closer look at these microbes.
This farm is in Aomori Prefecture, northern Japan. Akinori Kimura grows apples here without using any agricultural chemicals. Growing apples without chemicals or fertilizers is difficult because the fruit can easily become diseased. But more than 10 years of trial and error have led Kimura to successfully produce apples without them. He says the secret of success is recreating the condition of soil in natural forests. Kimura says apple trees would hardly grow at all if they were weak. He says the trees in his farm are extremely strong because they've been growing more rapidly than those given fertilizers. Shuichi Sugiyama is a professor at Hirosaki University. For 8 years, he's been studying how Kimura can produce apples without agricultural chemicals or fertilizers. His attention is focused on biodiversity. Sugiyama believes microbes are particularly important. He unearths what appears to be a white object. It's actually a mass of microbes. Sugiyama says the soil in Kimura's farm contains a very large number of microbes. He says the soil smells rich, hinting that a range of organic matter has been dissolved and fermented. Microbes can be found not only in the soil. A microscope reveals microbes inside an apple leaf. They look like black, twisting tubes. These microbes are endophytes. Sugiyama's research showed that apple leaves from Kimura's farm contained about twice as many kinds of endophytes as those grown using conventional methods. The professor says he believes the existence of a wide variety of microbes may have somehow made Kimura's apple trees more resistant to disease. People are now beginning to understand the relationship between endophytes and plants. Endophytes penetrate the surface of plant roots and leaves. They then activate dormant genes inside the plants. Experts say that as a result, the plants begin to grow rapidly and gain greater resistance to disease and pests. Other research is now underway on the use of endophytes in farming. Associate Professor Kazuhiko Narisawa of Ibaraki University believes conventional farming methods have undermined the diversity of microbes. Narisawa says farmers using conventional methods simply plant crops on their farms and give them a lot of chemical fertilizers to make them grow on their own. He says these crops are more susceptible to disease and stress because the farmers do not utilize the potential of microbes. Narisawa is trying to use endophytes to make up for microbes' lost functions. Narisawa says he's been collecting soil samples from across Japan and takes out one from Yakushima Island in southern Japan. So far, Narisawa has extracted about 600 kinds of endophytes from the soil he's collected. He says some have proven to be particularly effective for farming. This type of endophyte comes from a soil sample collected on Yakushima Island. Tomato plants were cultivated in a growth medium containing the endophyte. In a week, they grew about 6 centimeters taller than those cultivated without the endophyte. This type of endophyte helps prevent a disease that affects Chinese cabbage. A pathogen that causes the disease multiplies in soil where the cabbage is repeatedly grown. But when farmers put the endophyte in the soil before growing the crops, they grow healthily. Researchers say the microbe prevents the pathogen from infecting the cabbages. Narisawa says he believes that endophytes can draw out the hidden potential of plants. He says he wants to find a super endophyte that can help plants grow in any environment.
Joining me is Professor Mitsuro Hyakumachi from Gifu University. Professor, I'd never heard of endophytes. I was amazed to see that they help plants grow.
Microbes are known for their ability to help things decompose. But they can also make soil fertile. As we saw in the video, some microbes, called endophytes, penetrate plants to facilitate their growth or prevent diseases.
Are endophytes present in all plants?
Well, they exist in almost all kinds of living things on Earth. They're found in forests, too. Many people would think that a good forest is a place with beautiful trees. But for researchers, particularly those studying microbes in soil, a good forest is a place where abundant microorganisms and plants exist in good balance. Weeds grow in the apple orchard in the video. They're connected with threads of endophytes, as are the grass and apple trees. I think the owner of the orchard, Mr. Kimura, can grow apples without using chemicals because he's succeeded in recreating a natural environmental system on his farm.
The weeds and apple trees have a close relationship.
We call it symbiosis, which means both the plants and the microbes benefit.
It seems as though endophytes bring nothing but benefits.
There are many varieties of microbes. Some experts say the details of 90% of microbes remain unknown, while others say it's more like 99%. Researchers discovered endophytes only recently, so we know very little about them. The video introduced an endophyte that helps plants grow faster, but another type has the opposite effect. But to be honest, we still don't know whether facilitating plant growth is always good and slowing down growth is always bad.
So endophytes are still shrouded in mystery. The UN Biodiversity Conference that ended in late October reaffirmed the importance of preserving ecosystems for agriculture. What role do endophytes play in biodiversity and farming?
It's become more important in recent years to grow crops that have as small a negative impact on the natural environment as possible. To protect the environment, farmers try to avoid using agrochemicals and attempt to get rid of harmful organisms in other ways. Endophytes are expected to be useful for sustainable farming. They are likely to be used for farmlands where the balance between microbes and plants has been lost.
Will farming with endophytes be different from conventional farming with agrochemicals?
Agrochemicals kill pests, but they also kill insects and microbes that are beneficial for farming. So the chemicals destroy symbiosis.
Professor Hyakumachi, thank you very much. Now let's see how endophytes are used in farming in New Zealand. New Zealand has put endophytes to practical use. Endophytes are used for 80% of grass in the country's pastures. Bill Garland keeps 3,000 sheep and cows. He's been using grass that contains endophytes for 7 years.
This is quite a steep slope down here. Pasture in it was, it had a lot of rat's tail in it. It's now well established as a high-producing pasture.
Mm. So the novel endophytes, the AR37's really proven a bit of a winner with it?
Yeah, it has.
In the past, a harmful insect called the African black beetle caused grass in the area to die. Every time a pasture was hit by the pest, farmers had to use herbicides to clear the land and then plant new grass. Since the introduction of the endophytes, the harmful insect has seldom caused trouble, and grass has been growing well. Farmers say their livestock grows healthily too, and meat production has increased by about 30%.
We get a whole range of benefits from better pastures. It's probably the most important thing that we've had from science in the last 10 or 15 years.
Ag Research is the developer of the endophytes for grass. The company began the research on the microbe in the 1980s for an unexpected reason. Many farm animals in the country were showing symptoms of poisoning after eating grass. Research showed that microbes living inside the grass were the cause. Meanwhile, it also became clear that these microbes can curb damage from pests and invigorate the growth of pastures. This prompted New Zealand researchers to collect pasture samples from around the world. They identified the microbes that drive pests away and promote pasture's growth without harming farm animals. These microbes are endophytes.
So it's a very good success story over a matter of 3 decades. And so with time, this area of endophyte will only increase and become a much bigger impact on our production systems.
By reducing damage from harmful insects and increasing output, endophytes are believed to have generated nearly $175 million per year in economic benefits. Endophytes are being exported to Australia, the United States and Argentina. The market is growing. Researchers in New Zealand are also studying ways to use endophytes to grow cereals.
The use of endophyte basically reduces the amount of chemicals we need to use and also improves the quality of the product. It allows you to attract a higher price and it allows you to build brand values around a clean green country.
Tests aimed at practical use of endophytes are also underway in parts of Japan. One such area is in Hokkaido, northern Japan, a center of rice production. Seven years ago, Hokkaido set a goal of reducing the use of agricultural chemicals in rice farming by 50%. The agricultural cooperative in the city of Bibai decided to try using endophytes to achieve that goal. 76 farms in the area are using the microorganisms. The endophytes live in the roots of rice plants. The countless black objects moving around are the endophytes used for rice. If the rice seedlings are sprayed just once before they're planted, the endophytes penetrate them. Many farms in Bibai were infected with rice blast disease during the hotter than usual summer this year. This man says these rice husks don't contain grains. He says they're dry and almost completely empty. At farms that used endophytes, damage from rice blast was cut by almost half compared with farms that did not. This farmer says there's less damage than usual this year. Minoru Yamada says he started using endophytes 2 years ago. He says he used less than half the amount of pesticides against rice blast than other farms, but that the damage was minimal. He says the endophytes seem to have worked to prevent the disease from spreading. He says any reduction in the number of times agricultural chemicals are used will help distinguish the produce from that grown in other areas. The Bibai Agricultural Cooperative is considering full-fledged use of endophytes starting next year. The head of the cooperative, Seiichi Ebita, says consumers have certain preferences when choosing their agricultural products, such as those grown with fewer chemicals. He says it's the producer's responsibility to meet those demands, and that endophytes are a step forward. People may be concerned about the safety of endophytes if they're to be put to practical use. Are they safe to use in food production?
To be registered as microbial pesticides, endophytes must pass screening under many safety guidelines laid out by the Agricultural Ministry. So, in that respect, I think we can say they're safe. But of course, we're discovering many different types of endophytes one after another. It will likely cost a lot for each of them to be registered.
Sounds expensive.
Yes, it is. Once endophytes come into wide use in growing food, it will probably become necessary to tell consumers which endophytes have been used on which crops.
So we consumers have the right to know the good and bad aspects.
That's right. Some people may think that food products grown with endophytes are better, while others may think they're risky.
What about the impact of endophytes on the ecosystem?
Using endophytes as microbial pesticides will mean introducing specific microbes in large numbers at high concentrations into the environment. So their safety must be assessed by taking into account the possibility that they may destabilize the ecosystem.
So we need to confirm many facts as we continue to discover the effectiveness of endophytes. Do you think the day will come when farming will be possible without using chemical pesticides and fertilizers?
Mankind has greatly benefited from chemical pesticides and fertilizers, but they have also caused serious problems in the form of environmental pollution. In considering the future of farming, we must draw on the help of useful microbes such as endophytes, while using chemical pesticides and fertilizers appropriately. That's how we can slowly and steadily try to improve the environment in terms of agricultural ecology. We should learn more about the wonders of the links between plants and microbes, and use that knowledge on actual farms. That would be the first step toward environmentally sustainable farming.
So are endophytes likely to play a big role in environmentally sustainable farming?
Endophytes are becoming a very attractive area of research. In environmentally sustainable farming, chemical pesticides are considered to be the last resort. So, to preserve the environment for the next generation, finding more useful microbes and keeping an eye on their balance within the environment will likely become more important.
Let's hope for the best. In our next edition of today's Close-Up, we'll focus on a website that publishes previously unavailable inside information on the Iraq War.
今夜はこれで失礼します。